A 3-day celebration of sport, a raucous crowd, clutch moments, controversy. As one of golf's marquee events, it has it all, maybe more so than you remember. This is what you don't know about the Ryder Cup. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Matt, and this is Blake.
Hello, friends.
I love the gym Nance. Today we're going to talk about Britain's only gift to the sport of golf, the Ryder Cup. I guess the whole invention of the sport is probably some United Kingdom fairy tale, but we're not giving them that because it's the Ryder Cup, and we're entitled to talk trash about this.
Yep, we can do that.
Speaking of, Blake, have you ever had to do something with a team that you would have rather done alone?
Can we start this list by saying every group project in school ever? Because yes. There's always it just never goes unless even if you get to pick your group. Sometimes it didn't go the way you wanted it to go. But of course, your person's always got your professor's always got to make it random, right? Like you go around the room 1, 2, 3, 4, count off, and you've got to pair with the ones or something. Anyway. There's always the one person in your group that's not pulling their weight, or they're doing stuff without telling you, right? They're conceding things in your project and not telling anybody until after it's done. Is that fair to say? Am I on the right track here? Okay, yeah.
That's 100% it. I think the group project thing in college is 100% analogous. It's my college word for the day. You like that one? Probably said it wrong somehow. It's definitely the same as the Ryder Cup. You and your partner on the first 2 days could win all 4 of your matches. You get 4 points. You could win your singles match. You get all 5 points you played in, and you could still lose if everybody else around you is trash, right? It is taking a purely individual sport and turning it into a team game, and I think that's part of what makes it awesome. Because you can't do anything about the rest of your squad. They gotta understand the assignment on their own.
Right.
But hey, it's a great event.
It is one of the more unique events in sports in general, just because, like you said, you're taking the solo player and you're forcing them to play with a team, right? And that always brings up cool things, as we're gonna get into a few of them. But yeah, it seems like always there's a good story. In almost every one of them, there's something that happened that's memorable long term.
Yeah, and I think the team concept helps the storyline part of it, because you get things in golf that you don't normally get, right? There's no captain any other time making choices about who's playing, who's not playing, where they're playing, who they're going to play against, that kind of thing. And so it does for sure give us some important stories. I agree with that. You may be asking at home where the Ryder Cup comes from, and I'm glad that's what you're asking, because I can tell you that information. It began technically unofficially in 1926 at the behest of a man named Samuel Ryder, hence the name the Ryder Cup. He was an English businessman who had discovered the game of golf in his 50s. He actually had gotten sick. This would have been in the early 1900s when he was in his 50s. He gotten sick, and a friend told him that he should take up the game of golf because he would get a lot of fresh air that way, a lot of fresh air and exercise. It was the early 1900s, so fresh air cures everything that ails you. Get out there and get some. So in 1926, he pulls a team of American golfers and a team of British golfers. His goal is to get them to play a team competition against each other. They had done this infrequently as groups of golfers traveled to each other's national championships through the 20s. So British golfers coming here to play in the U.S. Open, American golfers traveling there to play in the British Open. While you're there, getting in some practice rounds, friendly competition. But officially, it starts in 1927 with the formal tournament and Ryder himself donating the trophy to the winners, a nice 2-foot cup that bears his name, the Ryder Cup. So, very unique name.
Original, yeah.
Yeah. It's like the Stanley Cup.
I was about to say it's like Lord Stanley's Cup all over again.
And just like the Stanley Cup, where the Tool brand is missing their opportunity at sponsorship, I'm pretty sure Ryder is like a wagon company, right?
Red Ryder is a wagon company. I think Red Ryder is like an airsoft BB gun type rifle thing. Ryder is like a box truck company. I mean, they're missing out. They're really missing out
on opportunities. Since the beginning, play has included some form of foursomes, four ball, and singles matches. Everybody understands what a singles match is. Real quick, if you're not one of our golf friends, foursomes is the alternating shot style thing. So there's 4 guys playing, 2 guys on a squad. One person hits the tee shot, next person hits the next shot. You keep going. For ball, conveniently enough, there are 4 balls in play. So there's still teams of 2. All of them play their own ball to the hole, and then the low score for the team is the one that is taken. Low score on the hole is the team that wins that hole. And then singles matches, obviously, are singles matches. I didn't realize this, but up until 1961, those matches were all 36-hole matches.
That's ridiculous. Oh, so, my gosh.
Started in 1961. It really hasn't gotten better, because in 1961, they shifted to play in like 18-hole doubleheaders every day. So you're still playing up to 36 holes, but it's not one 36-hole match.
Right, yeah. It's not like you get to 18, have to go straight to 1 and keep going. Like there's a break, you change the play style at least in the middle.
Yeah, it is 36 holes would be tough, and 2 days in a row of 36 holes would be tough. Now, the way it is now, you could rotate guys in and out those first 2 days, so you don't have to play 72 holes in 2 days if you don't really want to. And the one thing I found cool about the Ryder Cup is that if anybody else is like a combat sports fan out there, boxing, UFC, even our wrestling people, the champion's advantage is in play in the Ryder Cup. In order to lose the Ryder Cup, you physically have to lose the Ryder Cup. It is possible to draw in this event. You earn the same number of points. And in that case, the team that showed up with the cup retains the cup. So I just think that's an interesting possibility. It's an interesting outcome to have a tie, but it's not like we just take the cup back for 2 years. It's just an actual thing, right? Tie goes to the runner. I think that part of it's cool.
It's really frustrating in combat sports when you watch like a 12-round, 15-round boxing match or a 5-round UFC fight, and then at the end somehow it's a draw. Like one judge, it was an idiot essentially, and so like basically threw. But like in that sense, it's really frustrating, and I didn't realize that either until researching this, and that did happen. And we will get to that, but that did happen during a long stretch of one of the 2 teams' winning streaks, and they tied, which means they didn't lose the cup. The other team went winless. Let's call it that. Yeah,
unbeaten for the side.
They were unbeaten. Yep.
Got to use our hockey and soccer terms here for the Ryder Cup.
It's a draw.
It was a draw. So what we're going to do through this show is we're going to tell you a couple of stories. If you're listening to this on release day, you just experienced the highs of the Ryder Cup. Obviously, for everybody else that's not, you can go back and watch those Ryder Cup highlights on YouTube, I'm sure, to get yourself back in the mood for that. But these are some stories that they do come up on broadcasts and things, but they're not the they're not the kind of stereotypical ones in most of the cases. So I think that's going to be cool for you. The first story we've got is one of the single greatest displays, I think, of sportsmanship in any sport, maybe ever. Coming into the 1969 Ryder Cup, the United States had won 14 of the first 17 competitions. Like, it was not necessarily a competition to that point. They had won 12 in a row, but no event, as we were just talking about, had ended in a tie. And in this particular tournament, this is not unique to this year. It happens just about every year. You get people that are competitive together. They start having a little bit of animosity and a little bit of gamesmanship, a little bit of one-upsmanship as it goes through. So this wasn't any different. The British captain actually instructed his team to not look for opponents' balls if a ball was lost. If somebody lost something in the rough, hit one in the trees, it's proper etiquette for everybody in the group to try and find the ball. And the British were just not doing that in this case. There's some other crazy stuff going on. But essentially, everything's going to go off without a hitch. The U.S., however, is trailing after 2 rounds of foursomes on the first day. They end up behind by a point, 4.5 to 3.5. They're tied after the second day. They played both 4-ball rounds on day 2, and it was 8 points apiece. This year, in 1969, they played 2 rounds of singles that year. So after the morning singles, I know, we're talking about 36 holes. Everybody's in on the last day. So after the morning singles, the U.S. is down 13-11. So again, they've been dominant in this competition, and now they're facing a 2-point deficit. Jack Nicklaus, who is the person with the most majors in golf history, probably the greatest golfer in history, he was making his first appearance in this Ryder Cup. He was in his upper 20s and was a 5-time major champion as a Ryder Cup rookie, just due to some weird PGA rules. And also Sam Snead didn't play him, but a couple of rounds in the first 2 days. He left him off the squad, mostly because Sam Snead is a cantankerous old man by that point.
That's another good word, by the way.
Yeah. But Snead put him in the last pairing of the afternoon, and he was going to face off against a man named Tony Jacklin. Jacklin had just become the first British champion of the British Open in 18 years earlier that summer. So this is a guy who is playing in England, in Britain. That's where the tournament is being held this time. And he's playing in front of his home crowd. He's a hometown hero. He means a lot to the British golf scene. Coming down the stretch in their match, the U.S. had evened up the tournament 15-all. Jacklin hits a putt on 17 that's recorded to be in the 30 to 40 foot range. So it's an eagle putt to win the 17th hole. The crowd goes crazy because it's a pro-British crowd. That's where they're playing. And it reportedly seemed to rattle Nicklaus a little bit on the green. He had like a 5-footer to have the hole. So essentially nobody gains an advantage on that hole, tie on that hole. He missed the 5-foot putt because this crowd just went crazy. And that's the report anyway, whether he was actually rattled or he just missed, read, whatever. He missed the putt anyway. The group that was on the 18th hole mistook, because they hadn't looked at a scoreboard in a little bit, they mistook the roar coming from 17 to mean that Jacklin had taken the lead in their match, which would have put Britain at this point in the lead for the day. Bill Huggett was on the 18th green putting for the English, heard the roar, made his putt to have his match, and he thought that was it. He thought he'd got his half a point plus the point coming up the 18th green. We've just won the Ryder Cup. So he makes the putt. He walks off the green to the captain and apparently starts crying, like leans onto his shoulder and is in tears because he thinks that this thing has happened, but not so fast. On 18, everybody realizes that Nicklaus and Jacklin are even, and therefore if it finishes this way, the tournament is also even. On 18, both golfers reached their par 4 in 2 shots. So they both got birdie putts. Jacqueline is going to miss, leaves about a 3-footer for par. Nicholas takes a run at the hole and goes about 5 feet past the hole. So Nicholas is up first, nails the par putt. And here's an interesting thing about the Ryder Cup as well. Everybody does not have to finish the hole. You can concede a hole, you can concede a putt. If 2 guys hit a ball right next to the flagstick, you can walk up together and be like, all right, let's just go to the next hole, right? We're both going to make these. So on the 18th green of the last match of the tournament, everything is all square. Nicholas makes his 5-foot putt, gets his ball out of the hole, and then grabs Jacqueline's marker and hands it to him, concedes that par putt, and essentially says, all right, we're done. Me and you are tied. Whole tournament's tied. He walks up to Jacqueline and says, I don't think you would have missed it, but I wasn't going to give you the chance either. So in Nicholas's mindset, he's saying, look, this guy's going to make this 3-foot putt. I could force him to make it, and maybe he makes it and we end up tied. The United States keeps the cup in that situation. Maybe he misses it and we win. But he looks like an idiot in front of his hometown people. And so he doesn't put him in that situation. He takes him out of the situation completely. So that, I think, is an interesting and just a good-natured thing. Something you would expect out of golf, honestly, with the way people present the sport.
Very interesting that this happened because the United States wasn't going to lose at that point.
Right.
Once Nicholas scored, or once Nicholas sank his par putt, they weren't going to lose. They were either going to tie if Great Britain made that putt, or they were going to lose on a 3-foot miss. And that would have just been terrible for America. Was already on such a ridiculous winning streak anyway. It was not going to help if he missed that 3-foot par putt. So it's fascinating that he did that, and the backlash after he picked that up, like not forcing him to make that putt, is crazy to me. I don't understand that, but I mean, I get it in the sport in the sense of competition. Like you want to force, it's like fouling at the end of a basketball game. Free throw is the easiest shot to make, but you still have to force him to make the free throw. You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, his teammates were not all happy with him. Sam Snead, again, cantankerous old man, stayed mad at Jack Nicklaus for the rest of ever. Never really got over the situation because they wanted to win, but they also still won. I do. Now, here's the thing. Okay, so about this concession. So if you want to put a negative spin on it, you can. Some people point out that inadvertently or not, him picking up Jacqueline's marker on 18 overshadows the huge putt he made on 17 to let them be tied in the first place, right? So he ran this big putt in, but now all we're talking about is the concession at the end, not the big putt over here. And it also changes the narrative. Actually, if Sam Snead thought about it this way, he may have been less angry, but it changes the narrative completely, because now instead of talking about a narrow U.S. escape with a 0.5-point win, we can talk about this great act of U.S. charity toward the British, right? He let him tie. He let him tie at the end. How courageous and gentlemanly are the Americans? And so everything's got to have a negative spin to it if you try hard enough. But yeah, I think still, and it's not like it doesn't matter. There's a difference between tying and retaining and outright winning. Like, those are different things. Nobody shows up to tie. So I think it's just one of the coolest moments. These two guys end up designing a golf course together, by the way, called The Concession, which is cool.
That is a fascinating story. And yeah, I think that goes to show like who Nicholas really was. Because he was like, that wasn't just an act. I don't have the feeling that Nicholas was not that type of guy in real life. So it's pretty cool sportsmanship moment. I really like that.
Yep.
And we're going to continue forward in history a little bit, and all the way to 1973. So just two more competitions later. Before 1973, the Ryder Cup was only the United States versus Great Britain. It was just the Americans versus the British. In 1973, they expanded to include Ireland to compete alongside Great Britain against the U.S. The 22nd Ryder Cup occurred in 1977. And going into this edition, like you were just saying, the United States had more or less dominated this competition entirely. Other than that draw, the United States won however many before that, and then a ton after that. As a matter of fact, since 1933, the United States had only lost once. That was in 57, not including the tie that you just talked about. So based on Great Britain and Ireland's wishes that year in 77, the format was reduced. So instead of playing 32 matches, they only played 20. Now, maybe they thought that that was going to benefit them in some way. Playing less matches was going to allow them to have a better chance. No. Didn't help. So the United States won the event 12.5 to 7.5. A couple weird Great Britain / Ireland stories. I don't know how you say that. How do you say that, by the way? Do you actually have to say Great Britain / Ireland? Or can I just say, because it's not Europe yet? Anyway, we'll figure that out later. Nick Faldo playing...
Those guys. The thems.
Nick Faldo played for thems. Yeah. He played all 3 days with glandular fever, a.k.a. mononucleosis. And I think he won most or all of his matches that day.
That's like Jordan.
The flu game.
Before Jordan. It's the flu game.
Let's get it. Let's get so it. Peter Dawson became the first left-hander to compete for either team. He also played for those guys, if you're wondering.
It would have worked out better if he was the only left-hander to play for either teams. I said it. I said it.
Yeah. Okay. So Phil doesn't have a great record at the Ryder Cup, but we don't have to talk about that right now. So 1977 was another unique year. That would be the last time that Great Britain and Ireland would compete as Great Britain and Ireland. This was just the third time that Ireland stood alongside Great Britain. During the 1977 competition, the PGA of America and the PGA of Great Britain, they discussed the possibility of opening up the competition a little bit more. They had just expanded to include Ireland. They tried 3 times with Ireland's assistance and could not defeat the United States. And so Jack Nicklaus, of all people, suggested this change to open the competition, open the Ryder Cup to all players from continental Europe. Anybody who lives in continental Europe could compete on those guys' team against the United States. He was quoted as saying, "I don't know I played much of a role," talking about his role in expanding the Ryder Cup. "I took Henry Poe from PGA of America to meet Lord Derby, the British PGA president at the time, and said to Lord Derby, quote, 'We have a great match, but we are now the European Tour and should include Europe.' Because of this, the original deed of trust that was written when Samuel Ryder gifted the cup and started the competition, there was an original deed of trust written with all the rules and stuff like that. That original deed of trust was ultimately amended and then from that point forward included all of Europe. Any player from Europe could compete against the Americans in the Ryder Cup. So that was 77 was a really interesting year with a lot of future ramifications.
Yeah, and I think it's important that it's Jack Nicklaus doing this because he's Jack Nicklaus, number one. But you can see as you look through kind of the history of the Ryder Cup, you see that Jack Nicklaus really cared about the competition a lot. Like it really meant a lot to him, and he really wanted to see it succeed. I know in the 80s, he was. I know you're going to tell a story about the 80s, but in the early 80s, he was a little bit upset about how he didn't think sometimes the American crowd cared as much about the event as they should have, right? That the press and everybody just kind of took it for granted. Yeah, this is happening. Whatever. We're going to go watch some golfers, like an all-star game, and just kind of a exhibition instead of a competition. That upset him. So he wanted it to be a competition. We're beating Great Britain. We're beat Great Britain and Ireland. It's the European tour. Let's add all the Europeans. He wanted it to be a good competition. So I think that's telling. I think that's important, partly to his legacy too, is that he really did push the Ryder Cup.
He pushed the game of golf forward as a whole. And so it's only, part of that was expanding the game worldwide. And so in 1977, including Europe was a huge part to shape the history of the Ryder Cup all the way to today, obviously.
But now we get to yell at him. Dang it!
we can be a tiny bit upset because there were some in the United States' view. There were some negative ramifications that would come from expanding to all of Europe. We're going there right now. 1985. We're going to 1985. Good news for our European friends. That year was basically Europe's coming out party at the Ryder Cup. Up until 1985, Europe had not defeated the United States. The 26th edition, played in 1985, was played at the Belfry in England. Team USA would win the first session of the day 3-1 and led by 1 point at the end of the first day, 4.5 to 3.5. Day 2, Team Europe would tie the score after the morning session and then would lead by 2, 9-7 after day 2. So they just flipped on its head. After the singles on day 3, one round of singles, not 2, thank goodness. One round of singles. One round of singles on day 3. Europe would win the Ryder Cup 16.5 to 11.5. That, in 1985, would be the last Ryder Cup played in Europe that was not shown live on television in the United States. USA Network would televise the 89 Cup with video footage provided by BBC. And then starting in 1991 at Kiowa Island, possibly my favorite place on the planet at the moment, NBC Sports took over the live weekend coverage in 91. And then in 93 was the first time that a major U.S. network, NBC, televised the competition live from Europe. So not only did 85 mean a lot to Europe, because that's the first time they actually won as Europe, and it's the first time the United States has lost the Ryder Cup in decades, literal decades. It was a big deal for us, even though we lost, because that started the snowball where we could watch it live here.
Which is interesting, but it's also one of those things, there was no way to know who had done what if you were just a regular person at that point. So the live thing, it's interesting. It's almost interesting to me that they went live with coverage as early as 1989, because you're talking about like an early start. Obviously, USA Network had the room in their programming for it, but yeah, it's an early start in the day, and there was really no reason. We didn't have the internet. It's not like people have an AP news wire hooked up in their house to get information. So if all the networks just agreed to not spoil the results, you could show it in prime time or in the middle of the day or whatever you wanted to show it, and nobody would know. It would be like watching it live, just not live. So I get it, but it is interesting. This would be the last time from Europe not live. That's just a cool fact. I like that. I love stuff like that.
The very next Ryder Cup occurred in 87. It was played in Muirfield Village in Ohio, coming back to the United States after a devastating loss. The decision to expand to all of Europe would become a questionable one for the United States. So, of course, they just lost their first one in a really long time. They're coming back to America, playing home soil. Teams would leave the morning foursomes tied 2-2, USA and Europe. The afternoon 4-ball competition, Team Europe won all 4 points, 6-2 after the first day. Saturday morning extended Team Europe's lead, 8.5 to 3.5. Day 2 afternoon would be split 2-2. So Team Europe is still up by 5 points. 10.5 to 5.5. Sunday singles would benefit the United States team the most, but not enough to overtake Europe. They came roaring, not roaring back, but Europe would ultimately win 15 to 13. They tried their best. They tried their best. Europe wins their second consecutive Ryder Cup. The first time the United States had ever lost in the United States. One fun fact, though, real quick. Ben Crenshaw, playing for the Americans, broke his putter on Sunday, playing singles. On the 6th hole, he had to play the last dozen holes putting with his 1-iron.
You gotta do what you gotta do, man. Did he break it in the bag?
No, it was a frustration snap. Yeah,
snap it. That's just one of those things you got to think through. Like, I can see throwing a club. I've thrown clubs. I've beat clubs in the ground. It's just an anger management situation. You can't snap your club in half. Like, what are you doing? Like, what? Like, I don't understand that. You've got to finish. There's 12 holes left.
He watched too much Bo Jackson playing baseball, snapping the baseball bat over his leg, and he needed to feel strong for a minute. I don't know.
But Bo's got like 3 more bats that he didn't pay for in the dugout. Like, why
did you bring your extra putter to Ohio, Ben? No.
They don't let you put a new club in the bag, Ben. What are you doing? I never understand that. I never understood it. There's lots of ways to get your anger out. Do not snap your club because you're upset. Because you look like an idiot putting with a 1-iron the rest of the day. Like, that's just the mistake that keeps on giving there.
It probably didn't help his cause. Well, I mean, it doesn't look like America would have won anyway, but it's fine. A couple more facts about 87. 1987 would be the birth of the most successful Ryder Cup pair in history. Seve Ballesteros and Jose Maria Olazabal. They played over the years in the Ryder Cup. They played together 15 times, which is the most times played together by any pairing in Ryder Cup history. They won 12 points as a pair, which is 6 more than any other pair in Ryder Cup history. That just seems unbelievably dominant. They were both Spanish, and so there had to be a lot of chemistry there. Their home language. They could talk to each other's caddies. The caddies could communicate. Like there was, especially being in Europe, of course, all of us dumb Americans all speak English. But like in Europe, that could definitely be a problem where you could potentially be paired up with someone whose native language is not the same as yours. But these two guys came together.
Yeah. You see this in the Ryder Cup where sometimes 2 guys just gel together. Obviously, those 2 more than anybody else. But you just get it, right? Isn't it Patrick Reed that's like the Tiger Woods whisperer for the Ryder Cup? Like, yeah, you put those 2 guys together and it works out. Otherwise, it's almost a guaranteed L the first 2 days to send Tiger out there for anything. And then you see the opposite too, right? One year they played Tiger and Phil together in the first day of duos, and they just kept trying it, and it kept failing miserably because they did not complement each other well. In that situation, it just it's cool. That's one of those things that's cool. That's one of those storylines you get that you don't get in any other tournament because you don't play this way. So yeah, shout out to all that. But more importantly, daggone it, Jack Nicklaus, we don't lose till you come up with this harebrained idea to include all these Europeans. Come on, man. We don't care about moving the game forward. We care about winning.
There's a bit of irony regarding Jack Nicklaus. So in 87, I mentioned that the tournament was played in Muirfield Village in Ohio. Guess who founded and designed that course?
The Golden Bear. It's Jack Nicklaus.
Jack did. He's the one not responsible for the expansion of the Ryder Cup to include all of Europe, and the Americans would fall to the first time on American soil on one of his courses.
Man. And then the hits kept coming because once we lost that first time, since 1985, the United States, to the point of this recording, has only won 5 more Ryder Cups at the time of this recording, which again is before the Ryder Cups. is played this year. The Europeans have won a grand total of 14 since that time. 14-5. We are getting destroyed.
Embarrassed.
All right. Before our last story, Blake, I've got a trivia question for you, but I've actually got 2 trivia questions for you. Not 1, but 2. So what we're going to do, you're going to get to choose the one you want to answer, and then we're going to give the other one to our listeners. So if you're getting this live, it'll be on our social media. You can tell me the person with the most Ryder Cup appearances, or you could tell me the individual with the most points scored in the history of the Ryder Cup.
I think I know the answer to the second.
Oh, okay. So
I think
so.
So now I'm scared. But
okay. So do you want to? Is that the one you want to try, or do you want to try the other one?
Repeat the questions one more time.
You can either tell me who has the most appearances in Ryder Cup history, or who has scored the most points in Ryder Cup history.
Okay, I vaguely remember seeing a name. I vaguely remember seeing a name that is related to a most something in Ryder Cup history, right? So I have a name that I think
this is why we can't research the same story, because you know all the answers to the trivia.
No. I actually don't, but I don't remember now. Now I'm confusing myself because I don't think I know which. I think this person is the answer to one of those, but not the other. I just don't know which one it is.
Oh boy! All right,
I don't know which, but I also don't want to give away the trivia either. So
all right, so you could
appearances or points. I still think it's points.
So we're gonna go with points. Who has the Who has scored the most points?
I'm gonna ask some questions. Is this a 10 question?
You get questions.
Okay. Has that person played for the United States or for Great Britain, Ireland / Europe? Most points.
This person played for thems. They were a participant. They were a participant for the Europeans.
Are they an active player on the Ryder Cup team for Europe, or is this like a historical figure?
This person is participating in this year's Ryder Cup.
Okay, so it's not both of those.
I've thrown you for a loop now.
Both of those bode well because the person I'm thinking of is still an active player.
Okay.
And it makes sense because he became a pro really, really young and is still almost winning tournaments, almost winning majors.
I will confirm they started as a pro really young, and I'm going to take that as a question.
Okay.
Just stole it from you.
I don't think I need any more. I think I'm going to
give it to me. Most
points in Ryder Cup history is by Sergio Garcia.
Sergio is the right answer. He's got 25.5 points scored in Ryder Cup competition. Puts him tops.
That is crazy.
Puts him tops all time. Even with, which blows my mind because Seve and Olazabal have 12 points as a pair. Which I guess they played together a bunch of times, so they didn't really get a chance to get more points somewhere else. But yes, 25.5 points. That's a lot of points, man.
How many appearances? He can, if it's every other year.
Yeah.
He started really young. He probably hasn't been chosen every time. Maximum, he has 15 appearances, just a guess. And he's scoring almost 2 points per Ryder Cup appearance. That's incredible, right?
It's pretty incredible, honestly. I don't think his winning percentage is the highest on record, even if you qualify it with certain number of matches played. But he wins regularly. He wins super regularly. So his total record here in the Ryder Cup, years played 99, 2002, 04, 06, 08. He's been in every Ryder Cup with the exception of 2010. So everyone that's been played since 1999, with the exception of 2010, he is 22, 12, and 7. So that's 41 matches, if I do math right.
25 and a half points in 41 matches.
Yep. Singles, he's 4-4-1. Foursomes, he's 10-4-3. That's his best point total. And then 4 balls, 8-4-3.
And he does not hold the record for most appearances.
Nope.
But has the most points.
Different person with the record for most appearances. Check out our social media for that question. There was a hidden hint in this episode, though, for that. All right. Are you ready for your last story about the Ryder Cup?
Let's go.
We all say yes. So we're going to 1999, but we're not necessarily going to tell you the story you want to hear about 1999, because we all know that story of how the Americans courageously and triumphantly came storming back in the greatest comeback in the history of all sports against the British. We know that, or the Europeans. We know that happened. You're going to see that story 6,000 times. Every time they show golf highlights, I feel like we talk about the 99 Ryder Cup. We don't talk about the 2012 equivalent where the U.S. Lost in the same fashion, because I don't know why.
We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, I don't know why we do that, but all of our listeners that are European are just like, these people are idiots. We hate them, which is okay, because it's Ryder Cup week and we can talk junk. It's fun. But we're going to tell you a different story about 1999 that involves trash talk, because I mentioned that Jack Nicklaus was upset with the crowds in the 80s in America, 81 and 80, or not 81, 83, I think was particularly the one. He was worried about the American fans not caring enough. By 1999, that was not a problem. Throughout the Ryder Cup, there were reports of like verbal and physical abuse. Some of the stories are like, why are we doing this? Some of the stories are hilarious, though, I gotta admit. So in their Sunday singles match, Phil Mickelson was playing Jarmo Sandelin. They had a history. They didn't like each other all that much. And so there was a little bit of gamesmanship. We've talked about this before. So Sandelin had hit his ball inside of Mickelson. So he was closer to the hole, which means Mickelson is supposed to play first. So on his way to marking his ball, he kind of takes a leisurely route to get to his ball, walks real slow up to it, and it reaches in his pocket and is like jingling stuff around forever, like just goofing off, slowing Mickelson down. Mickelson finally asks, he says, "Hey Yarmo, do you need a coin?" And he shook his head, yes. And then a page straight out of pro wrestling, people from the audience just started throwing coins at the green, like just tossing them out there. Like, oh, you need a coin? Here you go, have a coin. Everybody gets a coin. And so, it's not something you want to do at a normal golf tournament, but here it's kind of funny. It's a little funny. But then there's gross stuff. So the British, not the British, it's the Europeans by now. The European team captain, Mark James, his wife was spat on in the crowd, which is just a thing you should not do to another human being, I don't think, in general. In addition, Colin Montgomery particularly had been singled out toward American crowds. He was the highest ranked golfer on the European team. He was a regular appearer here on the U.S. PGA Tour. He had a tendency to choke in big moments, and the American crowd took advantage of that. They called him a fat choker a lot in the crowd, and that's probably like the cleanest thing they shouted at him that we can put here. They also repeatedly shouted in his backswing, which I get. Everybody's like, well, what does that matter? Like, people are loud at a baseball game. It's not necessarily the fact that people are loud, right? We all go to places like Drive Shack and things like that where there's loud music and things going on all the time. People are hitting golf balls just fine. It's the fact that you're expecting it to be quiet, and it is quiet, and then someone shouts that makes your body jerk. There's nothing, you can't fix that. That's the problem with shouting in somebody's backswing. And they did it multiple times. Montgomery's father had to leave. At least once he left the grounds because of some of the stuff that was being said, not just to Colin, but to him, right? Telling him, again, the stuff that was printed is stuff like go home, whatever, all this kind of stuff. You got to figure there's a little bit more than that being said.
It was worse than that,
to make somebody leave. We also get the moment. We know the big comeback. We know that the U.S. team's trailing going into the last round. They come storming back. Justin Leonard hits this 45-foot bomb to essentially win the tournament, except it didn't, because the aforementioned Jose Maria Olazabal had a putt that could have tied the hole and changed the outcome. But the American team and some American fans stormed the green. Like NC State had just beat Clemson or something in football, right? We're just running out there. We're going to tear everything up. Reportedly impeding his line on the putt, which is not good decorum. It's just not what we should be doing. The event's not over at that point. But it does make for a great highlight, and it's pretty awesome. But still not right. So in light of all this, famed gentleman Payne Stewart was playing with Colin Montgomery on Sunday in the singles portion of the event. The Justin Leonard match had just finished. That outcome meant that the U.S. was going to win the cup, but all matches have to finish, right? You got to finish. You got to see what the final score is. You got to play till the end, except they didn't. Payne Stewart, when they got to the end, as they walked up to the green on the 18th hole, they both had made the green in two. Stewart's going to walk up, and essentially he's going to pick up Montgomery's ball, and he's going to be done with it. Montgomery had a little putt to make to end their round and have their match. He just picked it up. And so Stewart, these are some of the things Stewart said and Montgomery said about the situation. I don't know if Montgomery has a bullseye on his back or what, but he doesn't deserve what he went through out there. It's not fair. There were numerous instances of heckling, and a couple of people were removed. That's not what this sport is about. That's what Stewart said. He went on to say, as he was getting ready to putt, I said to my caddy, he doesn't deserve to have to make this putt. I'm not going to make him do it. I'm not going to put him through that if he misses, because he knows Montgomery's got this reputation for sometimes getting in his own head, missing these kind of putts. He knows that the crowd is already crazy. They're happy because they've won. There's no telling what they're going to say and do if he misses the putt. He's not going to put him through that. He's not going to put him in that headspace. So he picked it up. Montgomery went on to say he'd had enough. I'd had enough. He picked up my ball at the last. I'll never forget that. Not all the memories from Brookline, where the tournament was being played, are fond, but that match I will always think of with fond memories of that game with him. It's easy to point out in this concession, Stewart was willing to essentially lose. It's easy to point out that the tournament was over. It didn't have any impact in the overall outcome, but Stewart did not have to spare him the verbal abuse. He didn't have to do that. He could have made him make the putt, could have made him see what happens, see if he misses it, and he chose not to. And not winning the match is something that was important to Payne Stewart, right? There's people that talk about when Stewart won the U.S. Open in 1999, just a few months before this, he was excited not only that he'd won the U.S. Open, but he went around telling people that day how excited he was that it meant that he was on the Ryder Cup team, right? This was an important event to him, and to give up the loss was an important thing too. And of course, unfortunately, Payne Stewart would end up passing away in a plane crash just shortly after this event as well. So this is one of the enduring moments of his legacy. And he's always written about as an upstanding gentleman. So it doesn't matter, I don't think, that the tournament was over. It was just the right thing to do. So he did it. But there you go.
Very Nicholas-esque there at the end to just spare another person just a little bit of what may be coming towards them, I mean, it's very sportsman. I like the sportsmanship there. And I have a fondness for that area of the country. But if we're going to be honest about that area, that city in particular, it is a great city. Very, very many, many, many good people live in there. But it does have a reputation of sports fans, acting a certain way. And I'm going to leave it at that. If you're not familiar, look it up.
Yeah.
So
the city's Boston, by the way, if we didn't. Boston.
Again, but I'm very, very fond of the city and many of the people in it. But the city has a reputation, and that's all I'm going to say.
They lived up to
it. So, yeah. And so basically that is our way of telling a little bit of the Ryder Cup history through the events that happened. And so doing the research for this episode and hearing these stories and writing these stories and stuff is really cool. And it is definitely one of the more unique sporting events.
For sure.
Like we said earlier, you're taking individuals, forcing them to be part of a team for 3 days. Please, whoever's in charge, go back to Kiowa and play there again so that I can watch this there. That's all I ask.
I'll take a Ryder Cup at Pinehurst, if we're being honest.
It's a little closer, but
sign me up for that. But yeah, not quite as expensive either.
Oh God, no.
But yeah, that's it. So hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully you enjoyed the Ryder Cup. If not, take a look at some of the highlights. So hope you enjoyed it. If you've got an idea, hit us up. But thanks for listening.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only please, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.
Dang you, Jack Nicklaus and your Europeans.